Hello, good morning, and welcome to NewsFile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And as you know, here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. Ghana has made history by being the first in this part of the world to receive COVID-19 vaccines. As many as 600,000 doses have arrived. We share with you government's plan in how it rolls out. Are you likely to get a jab anytime soon? But why not? We also try to bust certain myths surrounding the vaccine. Have you heard even a nurse suggesting they may not want to receive it? The election petition. Dr. Dominic Ayine of the petitioner, as in the legal team, did make a comment suggesting that the Supreme Court appeared to have a predetermined agenda against the petitioner. Well, he says he's discovered his sin and he has apologized, does not intend to sin anymore. He has purged himself of the contempt. The Supreme Court has been satisfied. It didn't punish him. It let him go to sin no more. There will be no record of any such punishment by way of criminal contempt on Dominic Ayine. What an escape. How would you have been dealt with if you were not of the stature of Dominic Ayine? The court is still troubled about pronouncements in the media ahead of judgment expected soon. There has been the LGBTQI, and I get confused with them, advocacy office set up in Ghana. It has been brought down with the speed of light. But there have been calls and complaints of human rights abuses in the manner that they are being treated. We discussed the shutdown of that office, the mass opposition to LGBT behavior in Ghana, and the obvious legal dilemma that the country is faced with. We set up a commission of Constitution Review Commission. It ended up saying Ghanaians are against it. Ghanaian law is inadequate, yet let's leave the matter to the Supreme Court when it comes to it. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. And this is your legal light. I am in a legal light. New law. Nudity. Get foolish. Get 25 years in jail. There is a new law in town. And please be informed that you risk hefty monetary fines of 30 to 60,000 or 5, 10 to 15 or 25 years in prison for acting silly. Yes, acting silly and foolish. What else is it but foolishness when people take and publish nude or indecent images of children? Some take that of their sexual partners and publish or threaten to circulate them. Blackmail. Well, you have heard me criticize the Cybersecurity Bill 2020 as containing same concerns we expressed about the interception or spy bill the NDC sought to pass in 2016. This must be a lucky government. All the organizations and individuals who joined in that war that forced it to be reviewed and eventually shelved have been in deep sleep, in a coma. Remember President Akufo-Addo, the NPP joined the telcos, the Ghana Bar Association, etc., to kick against the spy bill? So, the very things we protested, including that dangerous backdoor approach to invade privacy without recourse to or supervision of the court, is now law in this Cybersecurity Act 2020. This time, hefty sanctions, including fines of up to 240,000 Ghana cedis, plus 5-year jail, await those who will breach it, including telcos and their CEOs. Telcos are still to install interception capabilities at their own cost. One of the things we kicked against, and the telcos chamber led the fight. To do so at their own cost, to be able to enforce information requests by the president's appointee or interception warrants procured ex parte by the police, if their equipment is found to be controlled or monitored or capable of being monitored in a foreign country, a service provider or their CEO, deputy CEO, legal officer or finance officer suffer the criminal punishment of 120 to 240,000 in fines. I may deal with that another time, but my joy today is about the law's protection for especially girls and women against taking and circulating or publishing indecent images. Doing so for whatever purposes, including porn activity online, attracts between 30 to 60,000 Ghana cedis, or plus a fine of plus jail terms of 5 to 10 years. The law punishes cyber activities involving sexual abuse of children and adults, including child grooming for sexual abuse or aiding and abetting same, or cyber stalking of a child, with 5 to 15 years in jail. A threat, in fact, you may get 10 to 15 years in jail. A threat to circulate indecent image or so as to get cash from victims, blackmailing people you may have had sexual intercourse with, which is sexual extortion, attracts 10 to 25 years in jail. And non-consensual sharing of intimate images, as well as threats to distribute intimate images or videos or video recordings, will get you 1 to 3 years in jail. You have been informed. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. That's your legal light. And NewsFile is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplast, where Duraplast goes, water flows. Heaven, mosquito spray and coil. Pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries. Robert & Sons Limited Optical Services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. We'll be right back to share with you when you are likely to get a COVID-19 vaccine jab. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. Welcome my guests for the very first and brief segment of the show today. Dr. Anthony Nsiah-Sarri is Presidential Advisor on Health. Dr. John Amoesi is lecturer, Global Health Department, School of Public Health, KNUST, and leader, Global Health and Infectious Diseases Research Group at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research into Tropical Medicine. Richard Edusapoku is farmer, is a doctor of pharmacy, CEO and superintendent pharmacist, Garrison Pharmacy. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you very much for joining us on NewsFile.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Great.
Good morning.
Dr. Nsiasare, so at long last, this is where we are. It was anticipated that we were not likely to get the vaccines this early. Some had predicted that the earliest that we may have gotten it would be sometime in June or somewhere like that. How did you manage this to make such history within the continent to be the first to receive 600,000 doses?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to all your cherished viewers and listeners. Yes, if you remember, at the 22nd update by His Excellency the President, he laid out that we are going to likely get our first batch of vaccines latest by March. But we're working around the clock. We are one of the countries, then about 98 countries who have joined the COVAX system. COVAX facility is to provide vaccines to about 98 countries at no cost to the country, and we are making sure that we get about 20% for the population of the country. So we are expecting about 12.4 doses of vaccine from COVAX. And God being so good, I think the UNICEF, WHO, and the Gavi look at our track record in immunization in Ghana. We are one of the highest uptake of childhood immunizations in the whole world. If you look at Penta-3 as a proxy, we are immunizing about 95% of children. The children in this country are taking about 13 different vaccines, and Ghana has decentralized our immunization system, and we are actively immunizing people. We have the logistics, we have a robust system in place, and this is the reason why I'm very sure, and I heard the UNICEF chief executive saying that's one of the reasons why they chose Ghana to be the first to get the COVAX facility. So we are very grateful to them, and we're also grateful to God that it has happened. So we've been working around the clock to make sure that we start receiving our vaccines. We are getting about 20% of the vaccines that we need for the population from COVAX facility. The Ghana government is also buying its own vaccines, and we are buying vaccines, as the president said the last time, from every source where the vaccine receives emergency use authorization. So far, Food and Drugs Authority in the country has given 2 of the manufacturers, i.e. AstraZeneca and Sputnik V from Russia, emergency use authorization. And we are working assiduously towards acquiring the vaccines from all these sources. We are working also on the other sources from China, Sinopharm and Sinovac. We are working on Johnson & Johnson. We are working on Pfizer, Moderna, and any other vaccine, Covaxin from India, and then other vaccines which are in the country and also in the world. You know that everybody is going to the same manufacturers, the whole world globally, for the vaccines. So we'll be getting the vaccines periodically. So this is the first batch of 600,000 vaccines which have come into the country, and we are going to deploy it on Tuesday next week.
Do you mind sharing any details about the further attempts or processes, as you say, in getting vaccines from all other sources? What are the specifics that we have done so far, and what are the timelines we are looking at? Because 600,000 certainly is just a good start, but certainly not something to be too excited about, right?
Yes. Something we, as I said, we are getting for about 6.2 million people in Ghana. So if you are using the vaccines with which we are supposed to give 2 doses, we are expecting 12.4 million from COVAX. That's one source. And COVAX initially said they've allocated about 2.4 million of these vaccines to us. So the 600,000 is the first batch which is coming. They are sharing to all the other countries. The second place that we are trying to get vaccines from is using bilateral collaborations. We, like any other African country, is on the African Medicine Supply Platform. The African Medicine Supply Platform enables us to use their platform to access vaccines from any source. So we are also have placed orders, and we are almost concluded the orders. We have to place the order. We have to sign agreement, which we have done. We have to also send your letters of credit, which we are in the process of doing, to get vaccines also from that source. So the balance between what we need, because our budget is, our target is to immunize about 20 million of the population of this Ghana. So it means if you are using 2 doses, we need over 40 million doses, plus about 5% wastage, so about 42 million doses. So the rest of the 42 million, if you take out the 12.4 million doses from COVAX, Ghana government is sourcing it, and we've done a lot of work. They've already gone to, for example, Sputnik. We are talking to Sputnik through the embassy, Russian embassy here in Ghana, also through the representative here in Ghana who came to help them to get this emergency use authorization. So these are some of the things that we are doing. We are also talking to other people. For example, the M-Plaza using the platform of the private sector is also trying to bring in some vaccines. And what they want to do is that any vaccine that they bring, they will also add the same amount of vaccine to it for the general population. I know that they want to bring in immediately about 2 million vials of vaccines, and we are working together with them to get where they are bringing it, and then we will bring it into the country.
Yes,
so we are getting from all angles,
right.
From the private sector,
right.
We'll be financing some of the vaccine which is coming into the country, and the main bulk is from the Ghana government budget, which we have already allocated budget for it.
Right. So Doc, you mentioned
unveiling and then telling Ghanaians how, when, and which vaccine is coming periodically.
All right.
I'm very sure that within the next week of 2, we will get another batch of vaccines coming into the country.
Okay. You mentioned private sector participation. Is the health sector, private sector, allowed, or is there room for them also to procure and to, as it were, administer, just like we had for the test? Private, clinics or hospitals were also running the test as well.
No, not for the vaccines. The vaccines are special medication that we are bringing into the country. As you are aware, we have to follow the vaccines. If there's any adverse drug reaction, and it's being controlled very well by the Ghana government through the Ministry of Health. So the health sector is participating in the financing of the vaccines into the country. But we are not going to use the health sector as profit or selling the vaccines to people and then taking profit. But for example, if any of the private hospitals like Nyaho and the rest, we'll be using them as also vaccinating centers, because we want the vaccines to go to people who need it. We don't want money to be a barrier. So there should be no financial barrier to anybody. And I think if you look at the whole world, what is happening is that the vaccines are free to anybody who comes to be vaccinated. So that's exactly what we are going to use. And we are not going to allow anybody to sell the vaccines in any place. So for the meantime, the emergency use authorization is given to Ghana government to bring in the vaccines, and our EPI, the Ghana Health Service, will be the people who will be managing the deployment of these vaccines.
So directly you are saying, your answer is straight, that a private health facility is not allowed, even if they have the capacity to procure the vaccines for the purposes of also administering to the public at a fee. It's not allowed.
No, that's what I'm saying exactly. But if the private sector or the private health facility wants to finance it, they are free to do that.
Can you explain that?
Through the Ministry of Health.
If they want to finance procurement of the vaccine through the Ministry of Health, they are allowed to do that?
Yes. But they cannot bring it in and sell for profit. No.
Okay.
We are giving everything free of charge, but they can participate as a vaccinating site.
Okay, so they can participate, as you said, as a vaccinating site, and also by helping with the finance, which will be sort of a donation.
Exactly that.
Okay. So
in fact, let me add quickly that we are also using a lot of the private facilities as vaccination sites.
Right.
Unveil it, and everybody will know where you can get a vaccine when you go there, when it's your time to go for vaccination.
Okay, talking about vaccination sites, we hear elsewhere they are using church rooms and all of that. Are we going to deploy as much school facilities and so on?
We are using exactly what we have been doing when we have vaccination, mass vaccination. This is going to be mass vaccination, but it's in phases. So some of them will be static, some of them will be mobile, some of them will be moving even to people's houses, those who cannot come out, and we know very sure that they need vaccinations. So we are going to do a combination of them, like we do for yellow fever and other mass vaccinations. So they'll be static. We can use churches, because if you realize when we are doing yellow fever vaccination, sometimes the camp is in the church or at the Cheese Palace, and most of the vaccination sites from now, of this 600,000, will be in the health facilities and other, say, pharmacy shops. If there's a space in front of, for example, NS Chemist, or if there's a space in front at the Judiciary, if you are going to do it for the Judiciary, you can have a camp there and do it for them.
All right.
Parliament, if you want to do in Parliament, we use the Parliament health facilities.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. You spoke about...
So we'll be doing a combination of things that we normally used to do. We know how to do this,
right,
and we've been doing it for a number of years.
We have been informed sufficiently about what we already have, an already existing system and protocol for vaccination, and Ghana has been applauded for doing very well in vaccination. So I suppose that there's a lot of confidence in that area. But you said that the next batch, for example, might be coming in the next week or two. The one that is coming in the next week or two is not what government is buying. It's also this one from, is it Gavi or whatever? So it's coming free of charge, right? We are not paying anything for it.
No, the ones which will come in the next a week or two, maybe a combination of what government is buying directly and what we have also from COVAX.
Right.
So it will be coming in combinations. Government is buying majority of the vaccines. We are at a very advanced stage to get the ones the government is buying, as well as the one coming from COVAX facility.
Right. What's our budget for this? And we are not paying a dime for what is coming from COVAX facility, right?
What is coming from COVAX facility, we don't pay for the vaccines, but we are paying for the deployment and also for bringing this into the country.
Right. What's our budget?
The EPI, Ghana Health Service Ministry of Health, have come out with budget. There's one. We are budgeting, you know that I said that we need about 42 million doses. So if you subtract the 12.4, it means that the real cost of the vaccine. So the rest of about 38 point something million will be directly the one that the Ghana government is buying. Two, vaccines from different manufacturers are at different costs. Ghana government wants to buy directly as much as possible from the source, so that we are not going to use a lot of middlemen who will put price here and there and all sorts of things. So we'll get the vaccines at the right cost, especially using the African Medicine Supply Platform. they know the cost, and then most of the time they even try to beat the cost from the manufacturers even down a bit. I know that vaccines from AstraZeneca, the cost is about $3, $4 to $5 US dollars per dose. If you use the Sputnik V, it's about $10 per dose from the manufacturer. If it's Pfizer that you are using, it's about 19 or between $15 to $19 per dose. The most expensive one that I've seen so far is the Moderna, which is up to about $33. So depending upon the vaccine that you get, the price will be different. But Ghana government has put a budget, a composite budget, the first budget and the second budget, if we have exhausted the budget, but we are trying to ring fence some money to cater for the ones that you buy and also cater for the deployment of the vaccines in the country.
Okay.
I think it is a public document what Ghana Health Service through the Ministry of Health have presented, that it's the cost per deployment per person.
All right.
So I think about $3 or so per person.
Okay.
So if it is two doses, it means every shot will be about $1.5 to $2 per person.
Right.
So we have all this budget in place.
Okay. Thank you,
the
Doc.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Doc. I'll return to you.
Money.
I'll return to you so you give us an idea. We know that the first group of persons to receive their jabs, the president will start also to do the very important symbolic process that will also give assurance to people who have, some concerns about it and who are consuming some of the myth around it. But when I return, I'd like you to tell us how exactly you intend to identify that other segment of people with pre-existing conditions across the country. How are you going to do that in the villages where people don't know their ages and so on and so forth? But Dr. John Amoesi, listening to Dr. Nsiah-Sarri, reassuring.
No, thanks, Samson, and good morning to all those listening all over the world. I think we must be, very clear about this. Ghana needs to be congratulated for this milestone of being able to bring in these vaccines on COVAX first. It is no simple feat. And I think Ghanaians all over must celebrate this. I can tell you, arch friends, if I put it that way, in Nigeria, are totally jealous of Ghana for being the first to get these vaccines in COVAX. So that's really great. So a lot of the things that Dr. Nsiah-Sarri said are perfectly in order and on point and well appreciated. But it's also important that Ghanaians appreciate the complexity of this process and are able to put forward the right kinds of arguments that would help us to make the right choices and also to control any kinds of challenges that may come our way with the deployment of these vaccines. There's so much that goes into the choices that inform which vaccine we go in for. There's trade-offs here and there, and we've seen the way different countries all over the world have done things. In the U.S., for example, they've registered only 2 so far. They're currently considering the Johnson & Johnson. It's common knowledge that the Sputnik is never going to make it into the U.S., obviously. But why is the U.S. deciding to register, for now, only the Pfizer and then the Moderna vaccines? Why is it that the UK MRHA registered only the AstraZeneca first? And even Dr. Fauci in the US was criticizing the UK and saying that they went too fast in registering AstraZeneca. Eventually, the European Medicines Association, the EMA, registered the AstraZeneca, but unfortunately, less than 30% of the AstraZeneca supply to Europe has been taken so far, and Europeans are refusing to take the AstraZeneca. Why is this the case? So all I'm saying is that we need to appreciate who we are as a country and what informs our decision. What has been, again, let me put this forward. Why did the Russians go ahead and do mass vaccination in their country, literally, when they had not yet done phase 3 trials? What informed that? Was it foolhardiness or was it science? Now, I'm giving all these almost contrasting and conflicting examples among developed nations, and including an advanced nation in Africa, South Africa, which did order some AstraZeneca, but now about 1.5 million doses, but is not going to use them because of their concerns with resistance or inefficacy against their variant, and also their concerns that they have expressed about other adenovirus-based vaccines, just to show you that there is complexity. What does that mean for our country, Ghana? The key thing about vaccines is the safety and the efficacy. Safety and efficacy. The most important thing is the safety. So far, no vaccine developed by anybody, be it in the US, in Europe, in India, in China, or wherever, has shown any safety issues. And I think this is a very important point we need to drum home. No vaccine whatsoever has had any safety issues so far with regard to COVID-19. Efficacy, we see clearly, has varied widely depending on where you are. And this is where the rubber hits the road. The efficacy, the price point, the logistics that go into bringing it in, storing it, and distributing it. Why would we have certain vehicles which are authorized or allowed to be used in the US, maybe in Europe, but we have vehicles that are authorized to be used in Ghana or in India or in South Africa, which will not make it to Europe or make South Africa? Does it mean that we are shortchanging ourselves by having standards which might be considered lower, if I can put it that way, than what they would have in the US or the UK or elsewhere? My simple and straightforward answer is no. The argument is safety and efficacy. We are in a dire situation. We are at the lowest rank of the pecking order when it comes to access to vaccines. And thank God today we have our own African champion, Dr. Tedros, at the head of the WHO. Thank God that we also have Dr. Mwela at the head of the WTO right now, and they're really pushing for Africa. It doesn't mean things are going to be easy. So we've got to pick our shots when we get them.
Yeah, what do you
have access to?
Yeah.
What do you want to point, Samson? I just want to press on the point. We have access to the AstraZeneca. We're going to have access to the Sputnik. The efforts being made to bring in the Pfizer, BioNTech, and so on. Johnson & Johnson, wonderful. One shot, $10. Definitely a better deal by far than your Sputnik, which is going to be 2 doses, each 9.75. So it's almost double the cost of the Johnson & Johnson when that eventually goes through. What that tells you is that we need to look at these critically. Safety, no issues for any vaccine whatsoever. So it means that the decision-making points are the efficacy and the cost. The efficacy and the cost.
Well,
do we have the same ability to choose out of luxury like the US would have and say, we want only Pfizer and Moderna now because it's going to give us 95%? Do we have the luxury to say, oh, AstraZeneca is 70%? No, we want 95%, so we don't want AstraZeneca. So these are questions we need to ask. So if you ask me right now, so far, the decisions we've taken in Ghana are scientifically sound and economically sound. What we need to do is to continue and make those deals, especially with the Pfizer, BioNTech, and with the Moderna, because I can tell you that the news coming out is suggesting that very soon the Pfizer vaccine may be able to be stored at temperatures much higher than what it is now.
Right.
And the price point that the AU is getting the Pfizer, BioNTech, it's very close now to the AstraZeneca. So there's a lot going on. So far, we're on the right track, and we must press even harder. The challenge for me is going to be how we deploy these and how people are going to accept them. The evidence on the ground suggests that it's not looking pretty. And we've got a lot of work to do to make people aware. I've got people who are well educated with PhDs who are asking a lot of questions about this vaccine. They're not sure about it.
Right. So
we need to make them understand.
So I will shortly have Dr. Richmond Edusapoku help us with busting some of the myths that he's heard around this, and also the critical issue of the storage, the delicate nature of the storage, and the need to ensure that we get that right. Otherwise, you may be giving jabs that are useless anyway. Now, I wanted to know from you what you thought about the emphatic no that I got from Dr. Nsiah-Sarrey about private hospitals wanting to bring in, say, AstraZeneca or Sputnik for their customers, which would appear would also have relieved sort of the burden of the state in administering to the numbers that it's expected to do. What do you make of that? That you cannot use your private resources as a hospital to bring in what has already been approved by the FDA for the purposes of your consumers. Dr. Mwesi.
No, thanks for that, Samson. I can tell you right up that I totally agree with this statement. I was actually already shaking my head as soon as he started asking that question. And I agreed with that question because when Dr. Nsiah-Sarrey started speaking, I was concerned that the suggestion was that the private sector would be allowed to bring in some of these vaccines. You see, these vaccines need to be tightly controlled. And you need to be very sure that whatever comes in is authorized. There's a bunch of people out there who are already preparing the fakes. The fakes are already there. So if you're able to tell people in Ghana that only A, B, C, and maybe D vaccines are authorized, anything else is not authorized, you're much safer. Even in the so-called advanced countries, they are not getting into this private sector supply chain kind of thing for the vaccines. It will be a completely wrong move, a faux pas, for us to allow the private sector at this stage to bring in vaccines and distribute. And quite honest, I can say this bluntly, and I say this totally in the interest of the country and our safety and our integrity. The government must continue to tightly control this and ensure that we can track and trace every single vaccine that comes to this country. We must also put in place mechanisms to detect any fakes that might come in, because this is not child's play, it's life and death.
Right. Okay. What do you have to say about, as I mentioned to you earlier, what do you think about our storage capacity? Do we have the assurance that everything will be all right? And what are some of the myths that you have heard that you think that we should concentrate some efforts in busting? And I'm asking you, Edusopoku.
The myths are real, even in advanced countries where literacy rates are high. People have all sort of conspiracy theories. Okay, I remember 2 days ago when I was shaving my hair, and one of the guys in the barber shop said, "Doctor, will you take the vaccine when it comes?" I said, "Sure, I will take it anytime. Even yesterday, I will take it." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yes." And I took time to explain to the person why it's very necessary to take this vaccine. I think one of the myths has been that this vaccine has been developed too quickly. And what we are talking about is not a matter of people who have not been to school. We're talking about people who are very educated and still have issues. And there are clear reasons why these vaccines have been done so quickly. First of all, China released the genome of the SARS-CoV-2. Straight away, there's a lot of technology now. We can get the genome done, in weeks. Previously, it wouldn't be so. The moment the vaccine developers got the genome, they started working on it right away. And there are a lot of technology now. What Moderna and Pfizer is using, the mRNA technology, it's been existing for over 20 years. But scientists realized that no, there's an opportunity for us to test this technology, and then they moved on. This vaccine, you realize countries like UK gave almost $1 billion advance payment to vaccine developers. So money was there, resources were there to be able to make sure that these vaccines are on point in terms of research. And even before authorization came, because of their studies at phase 1, 2, and 3, quickly, they started producing some of these vaccines, even while waiting for authorization, because they realized that if authorization is given and you are now going to start the production, it may slow. People are dying day in, day out. So these factors, all these factors make sure that the vaccine landed as quickly as possible. For instance, we do something that we call phase 1, 2, and 3 in terms of clinical trials. Now, what the vaccine developers did was that they were running these phases simultaneously. All these things help to cut the time. So we need to explain to Ghanaians that in the scientific world, all the steps that were taken to make sure this vaccine is safe, they were done. But they were done at record time. And therefore, nobody should be afraid that there's a problem with shortchanging the system. No. So that's one common myth. Other myths that I've heard, for instance, on social media, and in fact, even with the speed, now there are a lot of volunteers to run these trials quickly. And something, let me even add now. You see, for instance, in Africa, under 14 years, we've got over 40% of our population in there. Now, these vaccines are under 16 years, they're not trialing it. So what will be our role in there when Africa, Ghana has such a young population? We need to have a look at that.
How much of an impact do you think the president taking it and the whole of the country getting to see that he's getting his jab, and perhaps other, VVIPs, if you like, also taking it, and the whole country getting to know, how much of an impact will that do to take away or remove the myth?
So say personally, I would prefer that heads of COVID treatment centers take the first job. The way we treat politicians and are afraid in them. I'm not saying I don't trust the president, but people will criticize. Politicians are taking the first jobs. They are the first on the run. So I would prefer that the frontline workers, the people who are the treatment centers, the COVID treatment centers, they take the first jobs. I think you clearly see this across the globe. And I don't think when you see doctors at Kolebu, 37, Konfanoche, University of Ghana Medical Centers taking these jobs, these are the people who are looking after the COVID patients. It endures to the benefit of citizens. Politicians later on can follow. That's my personal view.
All right. Yes, so Dr. Nsiah-Asare, I was asking earlier, how are we going to go about identifying the aged and the people with the pre-existing conditions who must join the category of those to receive it first, together with frontline persons and the rest? How are you going to do that, particularly in villages? Hello, Dr. Nsiah-Asare. Please unmute. Please unmute.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much, Samson. As I told you earlier, our immunization system in the country is completely decentralized. So we are going to use our community health nurses in the villages. We are going to use our volunteers in the villages, the assemblymen and the rest to tell us who is old and sick in the house who needs to be immunized or vaccinated. That's one. Two, there are also this group of people with underlying illness attend clinics and hospitals in the country.
Right.
We are using the data of people attending, for example, hypertensive clinic, diabetic clinic across the country, also as another source of data that we are going to use to immunize them. That is very easy. We just call all of them and tell them to come to where they do their clinic and they'll get their jabs. Those at home will also be identified, as I said, by the assemblymen, the unit committee members, the volunteers who are helping our community health nurses at the CHIP zones. They will also bring them up. So this is exactly what we are going to use. And individuals who know that your grandmother, your mother, who is above 60 is at home, and then you will also come for the jab. Right. Going forward, we are going to have an app where people can also book appointment, so that you book an appointment and then you'll be sent the SMS message that it's time for you to come for your immunization, especially the second doses after 8 weeks, so that you are prompted and then you come for the immunization. So we are going to use all these multiple systems to identify the people. And as you rightly said, we've segmented the population into groups, and we have also done what you call geographical segmentation, using the data that we have, that we are starting from the hot areas. We know when you see the Ghana Health Service dashboard, you realize the places which we call the hotspots. The greater Accra metropolis of the surrounding districts like Awutu, Senya, West and East. And also, if you go to the greater Kumasi metropolis, these are the hot areas that we are having in this country. So they will start having their vaccinations, and then we follow it up with the next hotspot, and until we finish having our target, which is the 20 million population of the country.
Yeah, Dr. Nsiah-Sarrey, just got a couple of minutes, but very quickly, you mentioned an app. We know that there was supposed to be this contact tracing app, which people have said, didn't amount to anything really. We didn't see anything about it. It was just, sprung on us and nothing really was done. This app, is it being developed or is already in? And how is it going to work?
Well, we've seen about 2 or 3 people have come to show us simple apps that we can use to let people register and people come for the immunization. So, and then we will not even, you remember that during the registration, getting to the end of the registration, Electoral Commission also developed a very simple app where people were using it to book appointments. So we are looking at all these things. So starting, we will use the data that we have. We will do the announcements. We will do the people in the villages will also hear from their communication centers, and we use the mass media. We use the information service division. And in addition, those who can use apps can go on the apps and then book appointment and then go and have your immunization.
Okay. In 30 seconds, what will be your final word? What will be your final word in 30 seconds as we get ready to begin the rollout?
My final word is that we've been giving 13 vaccines, different vaccines to children in this country. We take the children for these vaccinations and nothing happens to them. That's the reason why since 2003, we have not had a single death from measles. Now is the turn of the adults. So please, let's show our children and our grandchildren in this country that when they are young, we take them for immunization. Now it's our turn for only maximum 2 jabs. Let's go for it.
All right.
Do not do anything to you. You save yourself, you save your neighbor, and then you save the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nsiah-Sarrey is the Presidential Advisor on Health. Now, Dr. John Amoesi, finally to you also, I don't know how you feel about this, but I have a certain feeling that we are now going to use our assembly members and so on to go and look for who must receive a jab in the line of the first receivers. I would have thought that perhaps by now we would have had that everything set up already. You are not concerned?
No, I think you asked a great question. I certainly am concerned, maybe at a more macro level than you mentioned. And it just goes to what I've been speaking to for a long time, which is our ability to collect high quality data. Let me be very clear and emphatic in stating that here in Ghana, we have performed much better than many other African countries. You just compare to Togo, to Burkina Faso, to La Côte d'Ivoire even, and several others across the West Coast. It is phenomenal what we've been able to do, but it is just not enough to provide us with enough information to make this pinpoint, really precise surgical administration or deployment of the vaccines, which will save time and will save costs ultimately. We only now, thanks to support again from the government, trying to roll out a seroprevalence study. We do not even know exactly what our seroprevalence levels are. In a country even like Mali, which is less advanced than us, they have the data on this. It's very interesting in the urban areas, but they've been tracking the seroprevalence ever since, from the middle of 2020 through to the end of December 2020, showing a change in seroprevalence in urban areas of about 20-something%, and now almost 60%, close to 60% seroprevalence in Bamako. And in rural areas now, almost about 45%. Now, this is the kind of information that helps you to know how many doses of vaccines you need and how you can deploy them. If I had my own way, I'd have even loved for people to do a seroprevalence, a serology test before even taking the vaccine. But that'll be wishful thinking. So all I'm saying is that we need to ramp up our testing regime, because even without that, how can you even tell how effective the vaccine is in reducing transmission? Exciting news coming out of the UK, Samson, just in a few more minutes. I must talk about this. A few more minutes. Just showing how the vaccine not only reduces your risk of getting ill, but also reduces the risk of transmitting the virus itself. That's phenomenal. How can you know this if you're not doing really precise testing and being able to measure the changes in rate of transmission? I'll keep on harping on this and hoping that we can do this in a very systematic way in order to further improve our ability to roll out these vaccines and get the best we can out of them. But definitely those vaccines, we've got to take them and take them fast.
Right. Thank you so very much, Dr. John Amwesi, lecturer, Global Health Department, School of Public Health, KNUST, and leader Global Health and Infectious Diseases Research Group at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research into Tropical Medicines. Has been so useful, helpful to us as a nation in this time of COVID. Final words from Dr. Richmond Edusapoku. Having heard from both Insi Asare and Dr. Amwesi, what do you have to say to conclude?
Yeah, what I have to say quickly is that this afternoon, for instance, the FDA is meeting community pharmacists on a Zoom meeting. We have to document any adverse effects of these vaccines that we're taking. These vaccines, as much as we don't allow them to alarm the citizenry, is not just injecting water. Now, there are some people who may have had COVID before, and they have a bit of antibodies already in the system. If they take this vaccine, their immune system defense will prime up into gear. They may have a few, malaise, fatigue, slight temperature changes. These kinds of education are needed because, Ghanaians, sometimes we even, the folklore, somebody sick, somebody said the genital got missing. So Ghanaians will just be looking up for any effects, untoward effects, and blow it up. FDA has an app called MedSafety app. And therefore, the plan also is that for community pharmacists are widespread all over the country, over 2,000 community pharmacy practitioners. And therefore, our role is that if anybody has any adverse effects, they can walk into a community pharmacy, talk to the pharmacist, we'll input this data straight to FDA database. So I will advise that we do education. I think that the EPI has a communication advocacy section, and I think that they should not just ally themselves into the Ghana Health Service, to stretch out, meet private people, independent community pharmacists like us, and then we will help with the education. When you talk to Dr. Insi Asare about the role of private sector, yes, just like the abuse, but I think that we must bold in Ghana. Can you get NHS? It's not just only public health workers or public sector alone. The private play a very crucial part. In the US, for instance, as soon as they were trying to develop the vaccine, I remember the CDC and other state governments and community pharmacists to be able to vaccinate as quickly as possible, even before the vaccines were produced.
All right.
But here in Ghana, I don't know, for whatever reason, it seemed as if only government-owned hospitals and clinics are the one playing the game. I think that if you're educated for 6 years, the government wouldn't take advantage of the taxpayers' money and get me to help in the system. I think that is wrong. Okay. I think that must be expanded.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Richmond Edusapoku is Doctor of Pharmacy, CEO and Superintendent Pharmacist at Garrison Pharmacy. Thank you all so very much. And Dr. Amwako Hene, who was on our show a couple of weeks ago from the USA, says that we should also be careful about one thing. Once we are the first making history to have received it in the continent, we may begin to become confident in a certain way that may get us relax our protocols, and people may become complacent, saying vaccine is here. So why do I go through the various protocols any longer? US suffered a bit of that, and within a short period, they had such a spike and so many deaths. So let us be careful. The vaccine is here, but until we get our jabs, where we are supposed to even get a second jab, until we get all of that, please do not relax on washing your hands under running water as frequently as possible, using your sanitizer, wear your mask, and at all times in public, you must have your face mask on. We take a break and return shortly with Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, Executive Director of the Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD, Ghana. We will have Joyce Bawa Mokhtari, who is lawyer and special aide to John Dramani Mahama. Also, Andrew Ejapa Mensah, lawyer and MP for 2nd D. They will join us as we get into the Supreme Court to try and avoid contempt. Or shall we get into it for seeking to talk about what they are troubled about? And then also the very vexed matter of LGBTQI, and there's supposed to be a plus because it's unending. We'll be right back. You're welcome back to your most authoritative news analysis platform. This is NewsFile. And here on NewsFile, we put Ghana first. This show is brought to you by the kind sponsorship of Bank of Africa, strongest group and closest partner, MTN, everywhere you go. Ashasi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Having mosquito spray and coil. Pleasant on humans, tough nightmare on insects. And Napa Foods, it is tasty. DBS Industries, everything roofing. And Robert & Sons Limited, optical services, your comprehensive eye care services provider. Thank you very much and welcome Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, Executive Director, CDD Ghana. Hello, Professor Prempeh.
Good morning, Samson, and thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure to have you. Andrew Ejapa Mensah, lawyer and MP, 2nd D. Welcome to the show, sir.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Great.
Good morning to my good prof.
Right. And here...
I just realized that the program that I'm attending between today and tomorrow is one of the resource persons. I'm looking forward to seeing him in advance tomorrow.
Great. Never a dull moment with him. I can assure you that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And here in the studio is also lawyer and special aide to His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, Joyce Bawa Mokhtari. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you, Samson. A very good morning to you. Good morning, Prof. And of course, good morning to Honorable Mensah.
Right. Okay. So, as we know, judgment in the election petition is expected very shortly. But before that, the court is uneasy. The court is troubled that there are people and the media allowing commentary in the media that is unhelpful to the judiciary and also seeks to ridicule and insult the members of the bench. They are so concerned, they have caused, the judicial service has caused their lawyer, Thaddeus Sorry, to issue a statement, sort of give a caution ahead of time to all media houses, and particularly for specific media houses like media entities like the Ghana Web, to delete the inflammatory commentary, the insulting commentary, the contemptuous commentary that it has allowed on its platforms. It should delete all of such. I suppose you may have had the opportunity of reading the statement as issued by him. I'll be reading portions of it. But what would be your commentary on what the court is seeking to do by cautioning everybody? And what do you also make of the Dr. Dominic Ayine contempt proceedings? He has been so lucky, hasn't he, that he has escaped. Escape, in a sense, I mean, you cannot actually say he's been found guilty of any contempt. In fact, there will be no record against his name in the future, like people will not like when they are cited for contempt. Start with you, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh.
Thank you, Samson. I have had the opportunity to look through the statements that the Judicial Service caused its lawyers to issue. It's a bit bizarre, to put it mildly. It's quite unprecedented, and I think it does a whole lot more than caution. I think you chose your words a bit too mildly. I mean, this is an extraordinary kind of step, and let me step back and say, the Judicial Service is, as appropriately called, is a service to Ghanaians, right? It serves Ghanaians by offering a forum for the peaceful adjudication of disputes, disputes of all manner, political, social, all kinds of disputes. And, in so doing, it helps to maintain social order. Of course, in Ghana, there are other places where we go to resolve disputes. In fact, the judiciary resolves probably less than 20% of all the disputes in the country. Most of them are resolved some other places. But the judiciary is an important one, especially for those who are in the formal sector. There is a reason we don't elect judges. And there is also a reason we make their removal very difficult. And it's all to assure them the necessary protection they need to be impartial. Because one of the ingredients one of the ways of assuring citizens that there is a fair forum for them to go to adjudicate disputes is this expectation that the judges there, the people who sit there, are impartial. So we give them that independence. But on the flip side, it's also an expectation that they would be accountable. Not accountable in the way politicians are accountable, which is they go back to the people and get voted upon again, because judges, we can't vote on them. So the concept of judicial accountability is all the time a very difficult one. How do we get judges to become accountable to the people that they serve? The first is that the courts are an open institution. The courts are open, not just for lawyers to go sit there. Any ordinary person should actually be able to walk in the court and sit and hear the proceedings, just as we do in the gallery of Parliament and stuff like that. So the courts we operate on an open court system. That's one way, so that we all can see how justice is being rendered. The second way, usually, is also that when judges reach decisions, they are expected to make public those decisions and the reasons for them in the form of a judgment, an opinion, a report. We are not always very good and timely with that, but it is an important aspect of judicial accountability. Now, once they do that, once they do these things, these are the basic things that at least the judicial system should provide, so that citizens can themselves have a look at what it is that is both transpiring in the court and coming out eventually out of a case. Now, I think the live broadcast and the version of the court proceedings on the petition does meet this basic test, right? It's open, we can all see, and the like. The question becomes, what can people say, right, or write in the course of these proceedings? I have always, as far back as 1997, I wrote a monograph. It's here, published by IEA at the time, Toward Judicial Independence and Accountability in an Emerging Democracy, the Courts and the Consolidation of Democracy in Ghana. And in those 111 pages, one of the issues I took up was how exactly we hold the judiciary accountable. And in that, I took issue because at that time we had had some experience with this very particular species of contempt law called scandalizing the court. And I took issue with that. Gave justifications for why I think it's anachronistic and needs to go out of our books. And the basic idea is that I don't think it is what people write or say, right? It is. I have to agree. Fundamentally, I agree. It is important that we maintain confidence and trust in the judiciary as an institution, because if we do not, then people will have recourse to extrajudicial means of solving their disputes. And oftentimes, that means that they may not resolve them peaceably, right? They may not be resolved in a peaceful manner. So confidence in the judiciary is very important. The question is, who destroys confidence in the judiciary? What will destroy confidence in the judiciary? Is it what people write or say? Or is it judicial behavior? Is it what judicial performance? Is it what goes on in the courts themselves, right? That will, by and large, determine what confidence people have. So if people go to the courts and justice takes about maybe 20 years to deliver, if it's too slow, basically, they may not have too much confidence there. If they don't get a sense that what is going on there is fair, or that things are not being done in an even-handed way, they may lose confidence in that. So in my view, it is not what people write or people say so much as what the judges do, right? And what they do includes how they are seen to be handling cases, and importantly, what justification they give for the decisions they make in a case, right? Because this is not a black box. Judges follow the legal method. There are lawyers, there are academics, there are other people who understand, can read an opinion and understand that, okay, this is how and why this decision was reached this way. Once those avenues are available, I don't think a court or judiciary should be worried at all that certain persons might have opinions critical of them in an unflattering way, right? Because even then, that opinion is never uniform. For every harsh, unflattering criticism of a court, there is bound to be many other on the opposite side who defend the court. After all, there are two parties in a case, and even if a case comes out one way and the losing party doesn't like it, the winning party also has voice, right? And they have supporters. So, and that has been my observation. When you go to Ghana, where you read online, the commentary on this particular petition, for example, if I put out a particular opinion, it's not as if I am the only person with an opinion, whether among academics or lawyers or just among the citizenry at large. There are a lot of counters to an opinion that I might offer or that somebody else might offer. So it's not as if what I say or what somebody else says or anybody else says is basically going to determine whether we have confidence in the judiciary or not, because there are other very sound, robust arguments to the contrary.
All right. Now,
right?
Yeah.
So that's my general view of this.
Right.
That this is not a law that we have to be contempt. Yes, general contempt, fine. But this version of it, scandalizing the court, I think really has a risk of actually scandalizing the court. Unfortunately.
All right. Now, yeah. So on the general approach that you take it, and as you look at your academic work, you refer to how to hold judges accountable also. So the question of accountability. I hope you are not suggesting that there are no accountability measures in the judiciary or in that system. We have the complaint procedure for discipline, where any ordinary member of the public or users of the court can make complaints, and judges will be taken through a disciplinary process. We have the complaint for discipline in the terms of Article 146 for impeachment or removal of judges. We know how analysis work, for example, led to removal of some judges, and that was not the first time some judges were being removed by this process. Myself, I have an example to talk about. My senior, under whom I read in chambers, Charles JoyNews, filed a complaint, and a judge was found to have misconducted himself and reprimanded accordingly. These are there. Is it your suggestion that these are not sufficient, or what?
Good. So yes, there are indeed mechanisms internal to the judicial system itself, right? In fact, the appellate process, for example, you lose a case. There are 3 tiers in the superior court system. Generally, I mean, the Supreme Court, if it's a court of original jurisdiction in a matter, can even allow you a rehearing or review, as we call it here. So there are opportunities in the judicial system to correct errors, correct mistakes, correct perceived injustice, right? Those are normally limited to the litigants or to the particular persons in the case, right? So that's fine. What I'm saying is that the public as a whole, right, so also have an interest, right? Because the confidence in the court doesn't depend on just one case. Many people are not privy to what's going on in the court on a case-by-case basis. It's actually shaped by a whole number of things. And I think the public, the nation, as the client that the judicial service is serving, is also entitled to form opinions, right? To form opinions about the administration of justice in the country. And those opinions may be in academic writings, they may be in media, they may be in various kinds of media. And what I'm saying is that those should be taken on board too as useful feedback, right? So for example, if I were a judge sitting on this matter, what I could say immediately is that there is intense public interest in this matter. I personally haven't had the opportunity to watch any of the live proceedings at all. I say that elsewhere. But I know how intensely people are following this. What if I were a judge? The message I get is my work is under very close scrutiny by everybody. There's interest. So, for example, in writing my opinion, I would make sure to cross my T's and dot my I's, make sure that the legal research is sound, make sure that the legal justification is sound. That's how public interest in what the courts do help improve actually the quality of justice. So for me, this idea that somehow one or the other opinion unfavorable to the court somehow, which of course is always counted by many others favorable to the court, that we single out the unfavorable opinion and say that is going to damage the credibility of the court. So we come, with this sledgehammer and say, not only should you be cautioned, and not only are you cautioned to not write those things, but you go and basically take down everything. What kind of threat is that? What is this? I mean, really, seriously speaking, what is supposed to be achieved by that? Which is why I'm saying that if we're not careful, how we use scandalizing the court itself would be what actually scandalizes the court. And it's a very slippery slope. So I have written in 1997, I said abolish it. This was before Britain even abolished it. Britain has not really used it since the 1930s.
All right.
When they brought it here.
So Prof, we will come to your concluding remarks, which will be the way forward, as some of you are proposing. I read Professor Kokwasare, I read several others, Oliver Becker Hughes. I've read, of course, Ace Ankuma has been on this for a long time, requiring for a contempt of court act, which would be useful for a long time, but it doesn't appear we are getting that way, even though those who introduced this to us have those laws, and it makes it a lot clearer how to deal with the question of contempt. But just a bit on the specific statement issued. Don't you agree when the statement identifies that media houses have either permitted the publication of or have published series of incendiary, hateful, and offensive statements and speeches on their various platforms, that some of these publications have mentioned the judges sitting, the names of specific judges sitting on this matter, and suggesting or insinuating, sometimes very directly, that the decisions of the justices presiding over the matter are motivated by factors outside the legal principles and proper judicial consideration. I'm sure you would have read the refrain that has become so popular on social media, the unanimous FC, and it is used in a derogatory manner to suggest that the judges are almost always giving unanimous decisions when, if they were to exercise quote-unquote independent thoughts, they would have had different views on the issues that came up. And they say that these things, among others, threaten the constitutional order and democracy as an important arm of government in being vilified and disparaged with impunity, that the speeches interfere with the due administration of justice, also that the speeches bring the administration of justice into disrepute, as unsuspecting Ghanaians are being deliberately misinformed and manipulated to believe that the justice system is perverted and lacking credibility, among others. Are they not justified if you have followed what is going on social media and the media landscape in general?
So I would have expected, actually, even though I think the approach is totally wrong. If I were to advise them, I would never go this path. But at the minimum, it would have been helpful if they attached. It appears that they've been, scanning the whole media landscape, photo, shopping, doing whatever. But at the very minimum, they should attach those specific things, because your subjective determination of what is harsh, what is demeaning, who is to tell? So what guidance do you have as a media house as to what you take down, right? They should be very specific. They should attach in an appendix every one of the things that they believe accomplishes the kind of danger that they have mentioned. But on a larger scope, and I say, for each one of those things, there are several others in their defense, several others applauding the decisions, several others praising them, right? So how is it that the defense, the applause, the praise doesn't affect opinions about the judiciary, but only the ones that are unflattering affect opinions about the judiciary.
Okay.
You know? And I think this idea that Ghanaians are unsuspecting, uneducated, this is roughly the same language. When Britain, when this species of contempt fell in disuse in the UK in 1899, thereabouts in an opinion, one of the, this opinion was, this case coming out of the colonies. They said, well, it's no good in UK, but for the colored communities in these colonies, it's fine. It sounds more like that. And I think it's not appropriate, right? I mean, people are not foolish, right? They are all, the nation is watching this. It's not just one group of people watching it, right? The decisions will come down. We know both sides, what case they put up, what the counter was. Everybody is watching. Particular decisions have not pleased everybody. Ultimately, a decision will come down, an opinion will be written. We will read it. We can understand these things, right? Your show will air it. You will do some more on the decision. This is what a judiciary should encourage. This kind of sledgehammer hitting, approach is, for me, the real danger. That is why I'm saying the justices should not be temperamental about this, because the moment you are seen to be temperamental, then it means that these things can affect your decision-making. You should not give the impression that you are being affected by these things.
Right. Andrew,
it's not.
Let me hear from Andrew Ejapamesa. And Andrew Ejapamesa, there are people who are worried that for those of you on the side of the respondents, so to speak, you are on the side of the second respondent. It appears everything the court does, you don't find any issue whatsoever with it. And they feel, that opinion, feel that what you are doing also feeds into the politics of the way people are seeing things. It must be stated that in the statement issued, they clearly did say that they are not against or seeking to say that people cannot express their opinions, particularly about decisions that they have taken, but that these expressions must be within what is legally permissible. And the criticism must be one that does not interfere with the due administration of justice. What do you make of how the court feels ahead of the judgment?
Let me say good morning to our cherished listeners and viewers. It's unfortunate I couldn't join you in studio or via Zoom as we had initially agreed. By and large, I agree with Prof on many of the points that he's made relative to judicial accountability, confidence in the judiciary, and all that. And of course, the clear limitation that ought to be put on the contempt powers of the court, just so that we can avoid abuse of that particular tool in respect of the work of judges. By and large, I agree. But with respect to the statement that was issued yesterday, Samson, you see, it is very rare for the judicial service. Indeed, I haven't seen a letter of this nature being issued by the judicial service in the past. Okay. And so when such a correspondence come out, we need to take a step back and then evaluate what it is that may have informed the correspondence having come out. And look, people have made comments. People have said things that clearly does not under any circumstances go to the root of the decisions that are even delivered by the courts. They have personalized, they have called people names, they have sought to incite. And so clearly, if we disregard these comments, particularly in view of our history, where we've had times in the past where judges have been attacked. Indeed, When you go to the Supreme Court premises, you see the bust of 3 High Court judges who were abducted from their homes and killed. We are told that Amatekwe acted on his own. So if we have actors making comments that are clearly insightful, that are clearly incendiary, but of course it's important for the judiciary, because they ought to protect the members of the bench, to issue these kinds of cautions for us all to begin to think that, hey, maybe we ought to be cautious in the kinds of comments that we make, regardless of what our disagreements may be. Of course, nobody, and the statement was categorical, nobody is saying that don't criticize the judgments or decisions that come out of the court. But if your comments are such that they are intended to incite, then it's necessary that we all take a step back and then guide the way and manner that we communicate relative to the matter that is before the court. So that's the context within which I evaluated
the same Supreme Court has had to say in one case that criticisms of the court, however rambunctious, are okay. They are not offended by it. So like Professor H. Kwesi-Prempeh said, why should they feel uneasy about the criticisms, however personal they are getting, and so on?
But, Thompson, if you look at the statement, clearly they are not complaining about criticisms of the court. Because, like Prof said, indeed, you read opinions of one Supreme Court panel and they differ amongst themselves strongly. Okay? Those are acceptable norms within the profession. And I don't have any issue with anybody critiquing a judgment that has been delivered by a court. But when your comments are directed at the person, when your comments are directed at inciting your supporters to attack the personnel of the judicial service, then it's important that they bring it to the attention of all Ghanaians so that we can begin to have a conversation like we're having now on the clear limits that we need to impose on ourselves when we are confronted with situations that we find ourselves in. Do you feel
that the media should rather take this as a helpful caution, which is intended in such a manner that the court does not intend to invite and punish? In 2013, the court took time to invite specific persons and punish them, convicted them of contempt, sent some of them to jail, took fines from some of them. Do you feel the court is doing this so as to give a warning and get people to stay off and not get into the situation where they may feel compelled to bring them in and punish them criminally, so to speak?
I don't think that necessarily the court is seeking to, as has been suggested by comments that have been read, to gag the media in running commentary on decisions that come from the court. Neither do I think that the court is intended to sound a caution that, look, mind your words, just so that we don't bring you in to, as it were, try you for contempt. All the court is saying, from what I gather from the statement that was issued by Sorry and Law, okay, is to the effect that by all means criticize, it is your constitutional right, there's freedom of speech, but in doing so, don't allow your platforms to be used to incite, to make offensive comments that clearly have regard to the history of this country, where persons have attacked the judiciary. We don't get to find ourselves in that situation or that situation repeating itself. So I think that is a useful comment or observation from the court that I think we all ought to look at it in that context of not wanting to have a situation where people support base particularly. And of course, Samson, the truth of the matter is that not every Ghanaian is as complex as probably you, Prof, and my sister Joyce, or my good self. Some people are overly emotional. They are not in a position to consider all the issues in a way and manner that we who are trained can evaluate and consider. They just run with their passion and emotion, and you never know where they may meet a judge and, cause some sort of harm to the person of the judge because of the kinds of comments that people have made, the suggestions that have been made that the court is not being fair, it's not being impartial, and that they are acting because they were all appointed by Akufo-Addo, which in any event is not the case. And so I think that if we look at it in that context, then we begin to understand or appreciate the clear worry that the bench and the judicial service have with respect to the safety of judges, and hence this communique, if you like.
Okay, right. We will try. We have barely about some 10 minutes to try and bring this to an end. So we go to the next discussion. And for good reason, I have decided to not focus too much on Joyce, who is in the studio, because she is one of the lawyers in the petitioner's camp in the court. And judging from what has gone on so far, it is only fair that I don't put her in a situation where, it might be a difficult one. So generally, looking at the statement as issued, would you say that the court can look ahead to what the attitudes on the commentary may be after the judgment, whichever way it goes? And because of that, it wants all of us to stay alert and be measured and tempered, if you like, in the way we criticize what goes on?
Well, Samson, thank you very much. A very good morning to everybody, and good morning, of course, to your viewers as well. I believe that when I arrived there, I actually, expressly indicated my...
Yes, you did.
To avoid any needless or unnecessary commentary. I would only just say that maybe if this had come after the ruling, considering the timing in terms of the context, even reading the contents of that correspondence leaves enormous room and cause for worry. But I would just say that the eminent jurists have spoken. They might have very good reasons why they have taken this step. But as a practitioner of the law and as a student of the law, I would like to just state, without any fear of equivocation, that I would expect that we do not turn this jurisdiction of contempt into a fetish, but that we should seek to legislate accordingly and give clear guidelines. At least I think in that sense, people will understand and people will get it. But I have no doubt that criticism will surely come. And as Lord Denning, the then Master of the Rolls himself has said, in many judgments that we have quoted from copiously as common law practitioners, that we need not to be unnecessarily sometimes sensitive. But certainly we do know that there's an extreme partisan interest also in this matter going forward. So I would leave my comments just as they are and hope that Professor H. Prempe and others would help guide this process so we can arrive at a certain amicable place that allows us to continue to engage, to continue to criticize, but at least taking cognizance of just what to and what not to say. I think that I would leave my comments.
I'll just read two comments from some persons who have sent them in, and then return to Prof. and Ejapa for your final comment, looking also at what happened to Dr. Dominic Ayine, because the suggestion out there is that in the end, he's gone unscathed. What would have happened if he were not a former Deputy Attorney General, not an MP, and the stature that he's in? Because people are now referring to what happened to others previously, and they have convictions on them, and that will stay with them for the rest of their lives. Now, Professor Kweku says, justice emanates from the people, and it is administered on their behalf by the judiciary. He's simply quoting the Constitution. It is therefore way below the belt for the judicial service to characterize these same people as uneducated and ill-informed, merely to justify a self-serving, stricter view of permissible criticism of judges or the justice system. The deeply flawed characterization is reminiscent of that used by a British judge in 1899 to justify why committal for contempt by scandalizing the court is obsolete in the UK, but it is fit for use in small colonies consisting principally of colored population. And he quotes the case. Then he says the characterization is not just demonstrably false and utterly needless, but it also appears to be a calculated effort to shield the judiciary from public accountability. The judicial service is in contempt of the people, and it must retract and apologize for the comment with urgent dispatch. It must also withdraw the whole statement, whose primary, if not sole effect, is to chill expression on the court proceedings. Further, those behind the contemptuous remarks have lost the right to serve in their positions. They ought to resign from the service or, failing that, be fired. Professor Kukwua Asare has been published quite many times in the course of the week in the manner in which he expresses these, and his expressions appear to resonate with a section of the public. So you hear people suggest that there's an attempt to gag the media and to gag the public. You've heard Franklin Kujo, you've read people like Manasseh Azore and several others who have said this. Of course, there are others who say that a proper reading of the statement in context does not give rise to the interpretations that they have put on it. Prof, what would you say about what Dominic Ayine faced and how it was concluded, as against the issue of contempt to members of the public generally? And then your concluding remarks will be on, going forward, how do you propose or recommend we regulate the exercise of contempt? Please unmute.
Sorry. I think, if we're going to continue to use contempt, this kind of scandalizing the courts, certainly the way it is used opens itself to great abuse and inconsistency. And the Ayine case, I think, exemplifies that. In 2013, again, I opposed each one of the contempt cases at the time in my writings. And now people have the benefit of comparing. And they say, Ayine is basically, a member of the political class in a significant way, Deputy Attorney General, who knows, he may well be Attorney General one day again, all of those things. And people see these things. And they say, so why does he get a slap on the wrist? I mean, there's camaraderie, my roommate, all of those things come around. Is that? So it looks like this is some kind of, clubby kind of behavior, right? If the court is going to use contempt, it has to be procedurally regulated. In fact, I think I wrote in 2013 that the way the contempt had been used was actually unconstitutional, because while the substance of contempt is allowed under the Constitution, it is also, like every other provision, every other limitation that is put on a person's liberty, which contempt is. It's a restriction on your liberty. It's permissible, but it is a restriction. But the Constitution requires, right, every person shall be entitled to his personal liberty, and no person shall be deprived of his personal liberty except in the following cases. The following cases includes contempt, right? And in accordance with procedure permitted by law, right? So I think that this has to conform to the fair trial provisions of the Constitution. You can't just, this kind of, you are in contempt and therefore, just come and face us. And then if you apologize, if you show contrition, if you do this, we can forgive you. But if, we don't know you well, then you may go to, jail for 10 days or 2 days or whatever. That, I think, gets the court down a slippery slope. So I agree with Joyce. If we're going to continue to use this, which other common law jurisdictions that continue to use them have codified it. It's codified, it's in statute, so that it's clear what constitutes contempt or scandalizing the court, what does it. And then people are on notice, clearly, not this fluid, amorphous, vague, highly subjective determination of who has stepped on our toes and who hasn't stepped on our toes. So I would say, first, abolish it. If you don't want to abolish it, codify it. Let's see clearly what constitutes the contempt of scandalizing the court and subject it to the fair trial provisions of the Constitution, because they ought to apply. Merely because the person, you think the person is contemptuous, does not mean that then they lose all of the procedural protections that the Constitution expects anybody who is put before a court criminally to forgo.
Right.
I mean, to be provided.
In 2013,
so that's how I would do it. Going forward.
In 2013, there was a certain procedure that was urged on the court. There is a scant procedural room in the CI 47, but there is also the Liberty Press case, which Atachia urged on the court in 2013. Unfortunately, it didn't work for him. In the Liberty Press case, the Attorney General will do the citing or the committal, and then you will be properly served. You have the opportunity to also file if you have your defense, and then you will be heard accordingly. Atachia suggested, and there's a good number of us who supported that view, that that is how it ought to be, and those who also say that a judge who must deal with contempt ex facie curia, as in contempt that did not happen in the face of the judge, ought not be the one to sit on the case. It must be a different judge. So you do it that way, and you have the state prosecuting it, and then you go and make your defense. It didn't seem to carry, and his client also followed the lawyer, thankfully, believed in the lawyer, and then decided that he would rather go to jail for it. Well, so there is some procedure already, except that the court believes that the power exists both in the Constitution and in the orders, in the rules of court, for it to do it the way it has sought to do.
I disagree. I think definitely the substance of contempt is in the Constitution, right? So the substance of contempt is not unconstitutional. The court can do what it is doing constitutionally, yes, in terms of substance. Procedure, the Constitution does not exempt contempt, right, from compliance with, Article 14.1, when it says that restrictions on liberty, must follow procedure permitted by law. And when you look at those procedures, Article 19, lists them. A person charged with a criminal offense shall be entitled to, 19.2c, 19.2d, 19.2f. A person charged with criminal offense, contempt is a criminal offense. It is not exempted. Contempt is not exempted from this. And so you see that the right to be presumed innocent is there, the right to be informed immediately in the language he understands, the right to be given adequate time and facilities for his own defense, the right to be permitted to defend himself before the court in person or by his lawyer, the right to... So all of those things are there. And that is the minimum the Constitution requires for every person charged with a criminal offense. The fact that the substance of contempt is constitutionally permissible does not mean that the procedure it can use its own procedure and get away with compliance with this because it's a criminal charge.
Okay, so bringing you before the court and saying, show us why you should not be committed is not enough.
No, I don't think at all. I mean, I think that the procedure that the Honorable Attaché urged on the court gets close to meeting this constitutional minimum.
All right.
And for any reform of both substance and procedure, I think we should take it on board. We should reform both the substance.
So let me hear you 1 minute on this because we need to go to the next issue. 1 minute. Their demand, therefore, is that those media houses, and I must say that it does not include the multimedia group, except that I am aware that they copied the multimedia and copied another media entity, which is a CAN entity, so that they can afford the public the opportunity of seeing this, but not copy them because they have also infracted. So they said that they have been given 14 days to do the things that they have asked them to do, delete and remove all of those incendiary, hateful, and personalized insults against the judges, failing which they will face, the legal process. What should these media houses do?
I don't know how they're going to do it. I mean, is there an appendix attached showing which statements are for which media house? I don't think that there was any attachment to the statement that would lead the media houses to really know what it is they're supposed to do. They're just supposed subjectively to go and determine this is spiteful, this is incendiary, this is this. Right? I don't know, but I believe that there is law in the books on incitement to all of those. If the courts think that a certain line has been crossed, I think they could go make a complaint to the police and say this particular statement is inciting somebody to attack us, and investigate it and arrest, prosecute the person. I mean, there is a way in which you deal with people who are trying to incite. If you think that is what is happening, I think that there is law that on the books that can deal with it.
Thank you very much.
I don't know if there were a media house, how I would ask them for more specifics.
All right. Okay.
I'll say, please tell me exactly what I should take down.
All right. Ejapa, can you help us in some 2 minutes what you think these media houses should be doing? Because my suspicion is that you could also argue that this is an opportunity rather so that you don't get to face the law and you don't get to face contempt.
Absolutely. And I was going to say that Prof himself had indicated, in his conclusion that there are remedies that are available to the judicial service. I mean, they could lodge a complaint, but probably because they don't want to go through that process. That's why they've issued this notice to aid the media houses to be guided. And I think that they should do the needful. Look, I don't have a problem, and I'm sure that the Supreme Court or the judiciary themselves do not have any problem with intellectual discourse of criticizing their work like we see all the time. I mean, the law review that we read in school all were essentially mostly criticizing judgments that have been delivered by the court. So there's really no problem.
Okay.
But I have a problem. I get worried with people who make comments that clearly is intended to incite violence.
All right.
Okay. And so I would expect that they will do the needful and pull those insightful publications down and maintain the ones that clearly are legitimate, in the scheme of things. But to the issue of the reform, and I agree. Look, we need to make progress in our law.
All right.
And Prof, you and I can have a conversation as to how we can work, in doing, because now that the private members bill is fully operational, I think that there's something that can be done in that respect. See how the codification of the contempt rules can be achieved.
Right. Judge Barr says you should pursue that because that is important.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. And we'll take a break, return to our very final issue, but a couple of comments here. Kofi Bento says, a foreign judge once told me, no good judge will be swayed by public commentary from the law and sound reason. He added that judges indeed benefit from commentary no matter how harsh, that he himself quietly follows public commentary and it helps sharpen his reasoning and improves his judgment. It even helps him with the vocabulary when writing his judgment. He said, the laws on contempt are totally oppressive and have no place in modern society. Okay, so I suspect it's about how it is done. That, I suppose, is the bottom line. And Oliver Baker Hughes says that on the distinction, one of the distinctions that needs to be made is that the gag order was issued by the judicial service and not the judiciary. And I think that distinction is very important. The Supreme Court itself, in a case brought by staff of the judicial service against fair wages, stated clearly that the judiciary is not the judicial service. In this respect, as far as I understand, the judicial service has no authority under law, practice, or customary law to A, exercise any powers of contempt, however generously defined, to issue gag orders to the media or anybody for that matter, and C, to take any action against any media house or Ghanaian for that matter. So when the judicial service says, quote, we must notify you, and we hereby do, that should you fail to heed our client's demands as specified in paragraph 14 above, we have our client's instructions to take appropriate action to ensure that you do not abuse the right of free speech, unquote. It leaves me wondering what at all they are threatening. So those are some views shared. We will take a break here and return to the vexed matter of the plenty acronyms, LGBTQI+, that debate. And we must say thank you also for your patience. You have been on Zoom for a while. Most Reverend Philip Name, President, Ghana Catholic Bishops Conference, and Metropolitan Archbishop of Tamale. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is NewsFile, it's your most authoritative news analysis platform. Now moving to the next subject matter. Let me read these messages. Edward Seyram says the AstraZeneca vaccine has an efficacy rate of 62%. Also, according to the BBC, it is disappointingly ineffective against the South African COVID variant. Well, we are told that we don't have the South African variant here, so we shouldn't have any problem. Nana Rules says, not pessimism, nor an antagonist to a breakthrough of such magnitude. But by and large, it's human lives we are talking about here. Ghana should not be used as a guinea pig in receipt of mere pittance. Okay, so then Baba, Chairman Tamale, says that I think a lot of sensitization has to be done to make sure we all go for and accept the jabs. If many people refuse to go for the vaccine, then the whole exercise would have been defeated. And then Kumi Eboa says, has our SDA independently authenticated? Of course, they have done so. So thank you for those views. TJ says, I strongly agree with our judges. As I strongly agree, our judges are not demigods. But what we need to remember is democracy without discipline is anarchy. Collins Gami says, from a common man and a citizen of the land, I feel the rule of contempt by the court, judiciary, needs a clear-cut way of definition that sits within the modern era. If not, soon, when captured by a dictatorial executive, okay, the meaning of democracy will be thrown to the dogs. Kofi Amwa says contempt. And I am right to ask if it's only the Whig men who can determine contempt. Parliament also has that power, you know. And if so, do they do it based on their direct discretion? If yes, then the matter goes beyond discussion to looks. I still don't trust the Ghanaian with discretionary power. All right, so thanks for sharing those views. Now, as you know, an LGBT advocacy office has just been shut down in Ghana, and a foreign mission made a publication about attending a party at that place, and that is what appears to have sparked all the brouhaha leading to the present circumstance. The Ghana Pentecostal Council, is it the secretary or so, has asked that those missions, persons within the missions who are found to have participated and encouraged that exercise should be found out and shown the exit out of this country. A number of comments have come from various places, including the Catholic Bishops' Conference. So let me begin with the Most Reverend Philip Name, President, Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference and Metropolitan Archbishop of Tamale. In your statement that you issue, you say that whilst we must hate the sin, we should not hate the sinner. What sort of description is that? Okay. All right. Now, Ejapa, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. There are those who say the way in which the government proceeded to the place to shut down the office, there cannot be legal justification for it. What do you say?
But how can an attempt to stop an illegality be described as to have legal justification?
And by illegality, you mean what?
Look, this LGBTQI, I don't even know how many letters now constitute the acronym. It's in furtherance of a certain sexual preference of some people, which clearly includes unnatural carnal knowledge, which is abhorred by our law. The Criminal Offences Act is clear in that regard. And so, Samson, if people are acting in furtherance of an illegality, and that's what I mean by if an office is operating in furtherance of promotion of an illegality.
What does the Criminal Offences Act prohibit?
Unnatural carnal knowledge.
Yeah, and you are referring to section 104.
Samson,
yeah.
I'm leaving of the school.
Right.
That law in itself is limiting. And so we ought to expand it to cover all the spectrum of LGBT activities and make it illegal. Because as far as I'm concerned, this has nothing to do with human rights. The UN Declaration of Human Rights does not include sexual preference. That's what it is. And so if our law is against any sexual activity that is unnatural, but it does not cover the entire scope of activities that constitute unnatural sexual relations, then the law ought to be amended to capture all the gaps. How is the office said to be engaged in what is prohibited by the law, as you refer to, unnatural carnal knowledge? But isn't it obvious that the LGBTQI, please help me, because I'm confused. I saw a literature over the course of the week that even has LBGTQII something, a whole lot of things. What is their motive? That, look, we need to be able to be allowed to express our love, quote, in any manner that we want. That includes same-sex, correct? Same-sex is unnatural carnal knowledge, is it not? But I need help.
So when we set up the Constitution Review Commission, it found out that Ghanaians are against it.
Absolutely.
But look at its conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
In its conclusion, it says that your law prohibits only one aspect of what may constitute
That's exactly why I suggested that we should
LGBT activity.
Of the law to cover the entire gamut.
Right. So they said this was their recommendation. Recommendation for constitutional change. That is in page 657. They said the commission recommends that the legality or otherwise of homosexuality be decided by the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court, yes.
If the matter comes before the court.
That's right.
So if it was illegal, would they not have stated categorically in this book that it is illegal in Ghana? So what do you mean by they went to enforce the law against an illegality?
But of course, they didn't say that it was a legal activity either, did they? The Constitutional Review Commission did not say that homosexuality is a legal activity.
Mm. Okay.
Okay. And so I'm saying that as far as I'm concerned, the Criminal Offences Act is clear. Unless, of course, you can give me a contrary interpretation to the provisions of that act.
Almost all the minister designates who have appeared before Parliament and have been asked questions about this. Adjoa Safo more specifically, and the Chieftaincy Affairs Minister have all said Ghana law is against it. Are they correct?
Not entirely, but to an extent they are correct. I'm saying that our law is limiting because obviously the scope of and it keeps changing by the day. They keep adding all sorts of categorizations to their description. In the past, it was just homosexuality. Now it's gone to lesbians, gays, and whatnot. I'm saying that to the extent that they grow complex, our law ought to respond by inputting appropriate amendments to capture the entirety of the offensive act.
We have been saying this for almost a decade now, as far as I can remember. Professor Mills's administration encountered it, and he was very categorical in telling the West and whoever was minded to hear that it will not happen in this country, even if we have to go hungry and will not get their aid. Then John Mahama's administration faced a similar situation, unequivocal response. Akufo-Addo's administration, this will be, I think, the second or third time that it is coming up.
And
the first time, let me conclude and ask the question. The first time it came up, the president is reported to have made a comment that suggested an endorsement of sorts that this was bound to happen. What do you say about that?
No.
And why have we not changed the law all this while if we really meant to do that?
No, I agree. And that's the sad bit, that like many things in our country, when it comes up, we speak about it and don't proceed to its logical conclusion.
Okay.
And let it ride until it rears its head again. So I'm saying that to the extent that it has come to the fore again, and ministers designate have made categorical statements with respect to government position on it. Clearly, government reflects the aspirations of the people. Okay? You've heard the Catholic Bishops' Conference, you've heard all the religious organizations, you've heard the Islamic bloc all speaking in unison against the perpetration of the sexual preferences of people in this country. Because if we leave the floodgate You never know
but
which other
the state,
is going to be included. So we need to act now.
The state is not governed by, you know, verbal pronouncements of the appointees.
Not a doubt at all. And I agree with you entirely. So I'm saying that, like many things in our country, this should probably spare us and put a clear closure to this matter at this time. Because, look, I hear people speak, and sometimes I wonder, I'm not going to be able to conceive of the thought of any of my kids coming to tell me that this is the practice that they are indulging.
Okay, thank you.
And
thank you. Now, Most Reverend Philip Name, thank you very much for joining us back, President of the Ghana Catholic Bishops' Conference. So from time to time, you have had to issue a statement, and this time around, the matter came up, and you issued a statement again, supporting the shutting down of the office, demanding to hear from the President his stance. What exactly do you want to hear from the President? And when your statement also says that these people are entitled to the same human rights that all of us enjoy and should be treated in that light, even though you say the practice they want to engage in, you don't see that as a human right. How do you marry the two? How do we treat them in the circumstance? Please unmute. Please unmute.
Pardon?
Great. We can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Okay. What I'm trying to say is the statement that we issued was first and foremost aimed at getting Catholics in the country to know clearly what the Catholic Church believes with regard to this phenomenon of lesbian, gay thing. And as well as inform all Ghanaians what we consider unacceptable behavior, especially when it comes to marriage. So that was our first aim. God, who created man and woman, he created a human person in sexual differentiation. That means man and woman. Also had an intention how the two genders could complement one another. And so our first thing was saying that to have a man wanting to lie with another man and have sex is unacceptable to us as Catholics. And people who are engaged in this should know that they are engaging in something unacceptable, and in some respects also against our cultural tradition. So that was the first aim. But we also wanted to appeal to the Ghanaian populace that it is not because they are engaging in something we think morally unacceptable that they should be objects of discrimination by all against them. And that's why we said, when the United Nations defined the human rights on 10 December 1948, this was still not a matter of concern. I mean, homosexuality was not a matter of concern. And those rights which were defined, about 30 of them, are rights which should also be accorded to the homosexuals. I had occasion to give examples to this. If you have a homosexual, that means a gay or lesbian, who has studied medicine and can use this skill to contribute effectively to the health of Ghanaians, he should not be discriminated against of practicing the medicine that he has learned, or engineering. If you want an engineer, civil engineer, to do a work to the benefit of the development of our country, it is not right to discriminate against some because the interviewing personnel happened to find out that this or the other one was gay or lesbian. That is the area that I would very much like Ghanaians to understand. You need to separate the humanity of a person from what he does, which is not acceptable. And if somebody is a human person created in the same image and likeness of God as all other humans are created, if he has an activity which is abhorrent, we need to clearly enforce that anytime he does this, he must stand before the law and be condemned for that abhorrent behavior. So if you ask me what we want the president to do, it comes into the first thing, to let all those, whether they are in school or they are finished school, who are in the practice of this abnormal sexual relationship, to further make it clear that this kind of behavior is against the laws of Ghana, is against the culture of Ghana. So this is the first thing that we would like the president to address. And also, I think that this is very, very much against, is flourishing in a context where unemployment, especially of the youth, if a lot of our youth finish university and they cannot be absorbed in the working order, it makes Ghana a fertile ground for the lobbyists of this LGBT who come in with a lot of money to lure our vibrant youth into these abhorrent activities. They have money.
What do you say?
And if they come and
what do you say, Most Reverend? Most Reverend, what do you say? What do you say to those who say that?
Second thing.
What do you say to those who say that you must limit, quote unquote, your preaching to the church or to the people of the Christian faith, because there are others who don't share the same faith, and therefore foisting your beliefs on them might not be accurate or might be problematic? What do you say about that?
Well, what I say is that, for example, we have been running schools and hospitals for the benefit of all Ghanaians. There are certain issues where we believe that as a church, we have a contribution to make towards the development of the whole country. And I think it should be known to you as a media person that when we build schools, we don't recruit only Catholics to benefit from our school system. We take everybody. If we are running hospitals, we don't say only those who are Christians or Catholics should benefit from our hospitals. So if there's a behavior pattern which we think can do harm to all manner of Ghanaians, we need to come out and say this is not acceptable by God. It's not acceptable by even the Ghanaian culture. And therefore, it is a matter of concern to all Ghanaians.
All right, thank you.
So I think that.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Just hold it on there for me. And in the light of your statement, you actually sought to also, as it were, correct some wrong impressions that people have held about what the Pope Francis has said some time ago, and you said that the intrinsic dignity of each person must always be respected in word, in action, and in law. Homosexuals must be accepted with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. According to Pope Francis, the homosexual person needs to be, quote, respected in his or her dignity and treated with consideration, and every sign of unjust discrimination is to be carefully avoided, particularly any form of aggression or violence, unquote. Families with LGBT members need respectful pastoral guidance from the church and its pastors so that gays and lesbians can fully carry out God's will in their lives. Nonetheless, according to the church's understanding of human rights, the rights of homosexuals as persons do not include the right of a man to marry a man or of a woman to marry a woman. For the church, this is morally wrong and goes against God's purpose for marriage. We should also point out that the European Court for Human Rights has ruled that same-sex marriages are not considered as human rights, making it clear that homosexual partnerships do not in fact equal marriages between a man and a woman. The ruling was announced 9th June 2016 in the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, France. Now, Professor H. Kwesi Prempeh, having listened to Most Reverend Philip Name and also Ejapa Mensah, what will be your comments in respect of the human rights perspective about what the state has done, is seeking to do, and is being urged to do?
Thank you again, Samson. This is a highly emotive issue. I'm aware of that. And of course, the constituency that is under scrutiny here is, of course, not a very popular, not a popular target in our society, and it's not a popular target, in fact, in most societies that I know. So it is important, however, that in a conversation like this, certain, in order to keep it in the proper perspective and to keep it civil, we should lay down certain basic principles. This is a democracy to the extent that we vote to choose our leaders based on majority rule. And, majority rule has a certain danger to it. That, philosophers and statesmen have long been aware of, which is the possibility that it could lead to the tyranny of the majority. The tyranny of the majority expresses itself in many different ways. But in all cases, it's usually a certain vulnerable minority that is targeted for mistreatment, targeted for marginalization, targeted for, all kinds of deprivations. It's important to understand that, so there is a clear risk. That is why, even in democracies, constitutional democracies that is, oftentimes there are limitations, almost always, on what even the majority can do, acting through the state. And the state, because they know that the state usually acts at the behest of the majority, so there are strictures on what it is that is acceptable for a state to do to the minorities, right? And of course, minorities can come in all shapes and forms. They could be just immigrants. I have been an immigrant in a society, lived as an immigrant in a place before. Ghanaians are immigrants in many other places, South Africa and places. You could be a religious minority. You could be a person with disability. That makes you a minority in many places. And all of these different categories of minorities are, depending on the society, may be vulnerable to the tyranny of the majority. So we should be very careful walking down a path where you single out a particular group and say, you don't belong, you're not like us in every respect, and therefore we will target you for particular disabilities, for particular mistreatment, for particular deprivation, and the like. That is one of the things that I think we should make very clear here. When the states, normally, the states is where the minorities would go for protection, right? In circumstances where they are at risk, they would normally appeal to the state for protection. But when that state, rather than protect the minorities, allows itself and its power to be deployed and co-opted by that same majority to further marginalize, victimize the minority, right? Then it becomes even more dangerous. I mean, the situation becomes even more desperate, even more dire. And we should be very clear what we are talking about here. It's easy for this conversation to get out of its clear boundaries and get into all manner of things. What we are talking about here, nobody is making a case for legalization of gay marriage, right? That is not, you can make all kinds of assumptions that, oh, if we allow this, we'll go to the next, there's a plus there, we don't know where the plus, fine. The issue on the table, what we are faced with now, what has brought this debate about, is a simple matter of freedom of association. Is it permissible for certain persons to associate with each other and, as an association, have a meeting place called an LGBT office? When Ejapa was speaking, he made an interesting point. What he said he was doing is essentially advocacy for law reform. He was advocating a change in our criminal laws to reach certain behaviors. That is entirely his right. Is Ejapa then saying that if you have another group of persons who think that those criminal laws target them unfairly or are extremely punitive, they may not, like he has done, they may not band together to form whatever, an NGO, whatever, to advocate better legal treatment. What the office is doing, I mean, people can make assumptions about the office. Nobody is even, I mean, and I think the Most Reverend also made an important point about what the person, who a person is, separating who a person is from what a person does. The law on the books in Ghana, we must be very clear what it does. Even in its most liberal interpretation, the law on the books in Ghana criminalizes a particular sexual act. Interestingly, that sexual act is, it could be gender neutral. It could actually be sexual orientation neutral. There is nothing in the definition of unnatural carnal knowledge that even excludes heterosexuals from actually running afoul of that law. That is the law on the book. It criminalizes a particular sexual act. If a person is not engaged in the act, and there is no evidence that that person has engaged in that act, to then move from that to say, if you have this inclination, predisposition, however you call it, proclivity, inclination, just because you have it, whether or not you actually act on it is a separate matter. Whether you have acted on it or you act on it, just because you have identified yourself as this person who may have this predisposition, we move from the criminal law criminalizing that act to then look at you as a person and say, hey, but you too, it's almost like you have now criminalized the person. You may not associate. You may not associate even to advocate a change in the law to make your condition more humane, right? So that is the point of departure here, that we are, what we have done is essentially saying, if you are a homosexual, if you are an LGBT person, right? If you are homosexual, you may not associate, even if it's for the purpose of maybe meeting, sharing your experiences, giving each other company because you are socially isolated here. Nobody, people, see you in a certain way. So if you form your own group to basically just give each other solidarity, whatever. And if you also want at some point to say, look, we also want to advocate the same way Japan did. We want to advocate on the other side, that instead of expanding the law to make it even harsher, that we think that the law, and this is just criminal law. Remember that criminal laws are repealable.
Right.
It's not even constitutions can be amended.
Okay.
So essentially what the Japan is saying is that he can advocate, right, that the law be reformed to make it harsher, but people who fall under that law may not get together and advocate that the law be made less harsh.
Two very quick questions.
What we're talking about, it's not about gay marriage.
Two very quick questions and quick responses to them for me, Prof. We have just been reading about someone convicted for polygamy somewhere abroad, you call it so, in the UK or somewhere like that.
Sure.
Right. Will someone be permitted to set up an office to advocate for polygamy in these countries which are at the forefront of promoting LGBT rights?
Oh, absolutely. There are many, actually. There are actually many, African communities, many immigrant communities abroad and other places where polygamy is prohibited who advocate, right? So that is the exact point we're saying. This person was convicted under a law that prohibits polygamy, right? This person is not being convicted for banding together with other people who share his preference to advocate for a change in the polygamy law or to do any other thing. I mean,
right.
Say, a group of people who just need to discuss the problems of polygamy.
And the reference I wanted to make was to Germany. The next question is, and very quick response to that, can't our government invoke public policy considerations and on the basis of cultural and general public aversion, as we have seen, to stop this office as it has done?
It will be difficult for me to see how that works. If the purposes of the office, right? It's clear, if the purpose of the office is to offer a space for people who feel victimized by, social exclusion or whatever, to be able to meet and to be able to share their experiences, to be able to see, find a way out of the social misery that they are in. And it also includes, unless we're saying that the criminal law is sacrosanct. Remember that the argument here is not theological. There are certain things theologically that remain a sin, remains a sin, remains a sin, remains a sin, right? That's a theological concept. In law, you have crime. We don't have sins.
All right.
Law,
okay,
right?
thank you. Thank you. Hold it there for me briefly. And now, Joyce, we have been talking about this over and again. It comes up, it goes. And there are actually people who hold the view that this is all part of the strategy of the financiers, that it should come up as often as possible. Then we talk about it, and then we'll get to acceptance and so on and so forth. Anytime it comes, we are clear we don't need it in this country. Why is it that all this while we keep talking, but we don't put in the policies clearly, and we don't put in the legislation that we keep talking about to end the debate, so that somebody does not even come to talk about it in your place?
Well, Samson, I think that all the other speakers have basically advocated for exactly the same reaction. I think it's time for us to stop paying lip service to this matter. It is time for the executive, time for our legislators, and time for all the key stakeholders to come together and find a way to put this matter to sleep. I think the only way is necessarily to find a way either through public policy, through legislation, through enactments, whatever. In any case, most of these legislations that we speak to are not cast in iron. Even our Constitution grants us all sorts of freedoms on the basis of religion, creed, gender, and what have you. You understand? So that definitely has a certain wide connotation or ambit. If the Criminal Offences Act in particular limits it to a natural carnal knowledge, we cannot necessarily enter the minds of the framers of that particular portion of the legislation and find out why they arrived at this conclusion. I think certainly it is time for us to end the debate and put it to rest. We do have sympathies, of course. We all empathize with what is going on. But of course, we do know also that it has a certain cultural and, legal connotation that probably does not necessarily engender for certain activities or actions for that matter. In fact, I'm yet to hear that there's been any arrest, for example, or prosecution of anybody in that category of LGBTQ, etc. You understand? Pretty much like in terms of prosecution,
Over the period,
for example.
some people have been arrested.
Yes, but you know that at some point there was even the whole debate about their rights and all of that, if you remember. You know, so it's been going on for quite some time. It forced Professor Mills to make his position known. It put the same pressure on John Dramani Mahama at some point. I believe that President Akufo-Addo tried very hard, the human rights lawyer that he is, to stay within a certain middle, argument. But certainly, it will not rest the matters as we have them. There is enormous pressure. There's advocacy. There's a certain mindset to that is gradually emerging. I think that government needs to find a way to encapsulate all of these sentiments and find the best way that, as Bob said, to work to protect certain minority groups as we have it. But sometimes even there are times when you even interpret the Criminal Offences Act as being at variance even with the constitutional provision on human rights, etc. I am a bit constrained to say what government should or should not do. But I believe that we can continue to have this debate for as long as possible. It will not bring us any conclusions for that matter. So certainly beyond politics, beyond the social ramifications, and beyond even the human rights issues. I think that it's time for us to...
As a lawyer, you must be very familiar with the provisions of the Constitution that we as lawyers are just too familiar with.
All the time.
And I am referring to, I want to just read small bit of this provision as regards the hierarchy of our laws in Article 11.
Good.
Customary laws are part of the laws of this country.
Yes.
So is it not clear that there's no custom in Ghana that recognizes this kind of thing? Exactly. And therefore, we actually don't have a lacuna.
Yeah. You see, I think that there may be no gray areas, for example, or there may be no lacuna as you indicate. But there is also that aspect that seeks to criminalize unnatural carnal knowledge. How it is defined, what we can define as such, you and I both do not know. There is still a certain conversation going on. The same cultures, the same religious bodies that this aspect of the Constitution seeks to embolden or to seek justification for also have issues with this particular aspect of it. Should we continue to legislate? Should we just allow things to stand? Should we continue even to give the impressions that there is a certain criminality that this act leads to? Should they be free also to associate, as Prof has just said? You know, something is actually a very complex conversation. But I think it is time for us to put an end to this debate. There must be a certain final pronouncement on the matter. Okay. And then we can take the conversation from there.
I'm sorry, Professor H.K.C. Prempe, Andrew Ejapamesa, Joyce Bar Muktari, Most Reverend Philip Name. Thank you all so very much for your time. Time will not allow us to go beyond this point. Just one message I wanted to read out from Angela Jamnabwaje. Says that there's a need for calm and non-violence on the issue, but we must all be aware that this has gone beyond some adults in our own space doing their own thing, for which no one should even bother. It is now that we should recognize and accept it in our laws, policies, teach it in our schools, and let children decide if they want to be who they want to be today or tomorrow. Neither he nor she, the third day or a day, and both he and she the fourth day. People want us to accept that they are transgender, transabled, transhuman, transage. All these are part of the advocacy of those pushing that we should accept this. And if we don't, you are queerphobic or homophobic, no matter how gentle you try to advance your views. No, it is wrong. Yeah, it is wrong. And it is wrong to abuse, lynch, insult those who identify themselves as such. But to say we should accept all this, no. All right. This has been NewsFile, brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN, Ashesi University, Heaven Mosquito Spray and Coil, and Upper Foods, DBS Industries, Robert and Sons. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next week with another edition of NewsFile.